All right, what's going on, everyone? Today is a very special day. Probably my one of my more favorite parts of tuning slash building a bow setup. This is going to be the start of me building my new bow. I'm building a Hoyt VTM 31. If you guys are curious on what bow I'm going to be shooting for this season. I have all the accessories and everything. I just want to do everything at home at this at-home bow setup. As far as like a shop goes, I just want to get it done as my first bow being at home. So this is going to be part of that. I have the press and everything ordered, just haven't received it yet. But today we're building VAP VAP TKO 300 spine. And we are going to go through my full process. This is going to be a little bit longer video. It's going to be very in-depth. I'm going to show you guys how I first off decide on what shaft I'm going to go with, and I'm going to go very in-depth. So I hope you guys have a little bit of time on you, because this one's going to be a long one. It's going to be in-depth, and I hope you guys can learn something today. I think you guys probably can benefit from it a lot, and I guess we'll just catch you in the first step. So you guys are probably wondering how I got to how I decided my arrow. I shoot the VAP TKO, so that's what we're going to be building here today. I think VAPs, I always go with a smaller diameter. It's a smaller surface area, so you're going to get less wind drift, more penetration, just because you have, less of a surface area with the same amount of energy, so your PSI is going to go up, pounds per square inch. That's just simple. I guess physics, would be the better term for it. But I think one thing that I really would urge you guys to do is, if you guys have a bare shaft, and then that means that it doesn't have any fletchings, it'll just be knock, no inserts in there. One thing I recommend that you guys do is spin your arrow and cut from the side that is least straight. And I'll show you guys what I mean by that. I think that's probably my #1 tip for getting the best out of any arrow, is just cut from the side that is least straight. So we'll go through that now, and I'll show you guys what I mean. We'll probably film it for you in slow motion so you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about, seeing a wobble versus no wobble on one side or the other. So we'll set you guys up on the arrow spinner, and then we will go from there. All right, so you guys see this tool here. This is called an arrow spinner. You can buy this pretty much anywhere at any archery shop. It's like $30, I think, something like that. What this will do is your arrow will, free float on this and spin as if it's in flight, and you will cut the side, either the back or the front. This is not hitting that, so be attention to that. Make sure your shaft's not hitting on anywhere when you spin these. But the front or the back, whichever has the most wobble, will cut. So we'll go ahead and spin this so you guys can kind of take a look what I'm talking about here, and we'll go ahead and cut all these. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to spin this. You can see that end looks really good, not too much flare. Come back over to this end. And it still looks really good. If you run into a situation like that where you see, both ends look good, just cut it from the front. If they both look fine, there's no need to do anything, cut half and half. Just cut from the end that doesn't have the straightness tolerance that the other end does. Whichever has the worst of the two, cut that end. Alright, so we finally have one arrow where I think we're going to end up cutting it on the back. It's not terrible by any means. It still has a great tolerance level, and it's very straight. But that back end looked like it has a little more wobble than the front. And we might as well strive for the best of the best while we're doing this. We're taking our time. That's one thing that is huge during building arrows. Just take your time, pay attention to detail, and 90% of the time you'll end up doing pretty good as far as fletching, inserts, and picking out the right arrow. And that's what this whole video is about, is just picking out the right arrow, building it the best for you. Your style might be very different from mine, but it's all personal preference most of the time these days, between who makes a good bow and all other sorts of stuff like that. But we're gonna end up spinning this in slow motion so you guys can see which end of the arrow is straighter. Excuse me. So we'll go ahead and take a look at this. All right, so we have all of our arrows spun. We actually ended up with 4 out of that dozen that needed to be cut from the back. Usually I ended up with 1 or 2, but you know, every once in a while I get a dozen that's either perfect or you have a couple more than usual that need to be adjusted on to which end you actually cut from. So we have them all lined up, and you can see I just ended up flipping the nocks. So the bear shafts are down on this end, and then we flipped it around. We're going to cut these. My draw length to my bow is set at 30. I cut my arrows to 29 carbon to carbon. My nock is going to add 1/4 of an inch, and then my insert that I use is going to add about 3/4 to a full inch. So that'll get me up to the 30 that I need. It's all dependent on the arrow and how long you cut it with the bow or the brace height. There's so much that goes into that, and we'll explain that later down the road in this video. But for now, we're going to cut them. We'll put the inserts in and let them dry. Very cool moment. If I can flip my camera around. This is the first arrow or anything I've ever done with my at-home bow shop. It's the first tool that we've used, and we just got our arrows cut for the first time. So I appreciate you guys being here for that. It's very sentimental to me. Always been a dream for me to have my own tools and be able to do all my stuff at home. And you guys get to be part of it, and I'm very honored to have you here, I guess is the best way to put it. So super excited. We're going to cut the rest of these arrows, and then we'll insert them, and I'll catch up with you guys at that point. But we'll catch up with you. Now that we have our arrows cut, what we're going to end up doing, first thing I'm going to do is actually go through here. I'm going to pick out all the ones that I had flipped around and switch my nocks back around. They might look a little bit different from like where the label is exactly. Like that one I need to grab. Flip it around back to the right end. And there we go. So what we have done is flipped our arrow back, and it might look a little bit different. So if you look, we'll put carbon to carbon here, and you can see my labels are not necessarily perfect, but they're gonna fly the exact same. They're cut the same length and everything, so that doesn't really matter to me. Arrows all go in the same direction, and we're going to put our inserts in. You guys are probably wondering what insert glue I use. I like A8E, the Max Bond. It's a black glue. You can buy it pretty much anywhere. That's my favorite store-bought from any archery shop. You can pretty much get that at. I've had good luck with Pine Ridge arrow inserts. Anything other than that, I haven't had too much luck with. But one thing that we are going to try this time that I think is going to work really well is this is actually Gorilla Glue epoxy. It's 3,300 PSI, so that's very strong. That should be able to hold up very well with these. So we're going to mix this epoxy together, and then we are going to end up gluing our inserts in. So we'll catch up with you guys. We're going to mix this together. It's an epoxy, just spray and go pretty much. We will roll our inserts in there, or the tongue twister there, and we'll go from there. The reason why I like an epoxy so much is, if you have an insert bend or something, most of the time you can heat the epoxy back up and you can pull your insert right back out. Whereas with a glue, it's pretty permanent. If you can get it out, you're either really strong or you have done a lot of damage to your arrow. So epoxies, I like them a little bit better. So all right, now that we have all of our arrows inserted, we are going to take our knocks out of the back end, push those inserts all the way down. Anytime you use an adhesive compared to a glue, it's best to take your knocks out and leave them flat for 24 to 48 hours. The longer the better, because they don't dry instantly, and your inserts can slide further or closer to the end of the shaft one way or the other, and you don't want that. Harms consistency, but it is very, very advantageous to use adhesive. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and we'll let them dry for 24 hours. All right. Oh, one more. Spoke too soon. Now that we have all of these, all the knocks out, we're going to let these dry for 24 hours, let them sit, let that epoxy do its thing, and then we will come back in and go through the fletching process. So I'll catch up with you guys then. I chose the Vap TKOs. That's the arrow that I have right here. They're 4mm, and in the archery world, 99% of your shops are going to carry most commonly these three sizes. That's going to be a 6.5mm, a 5mm, and a 4mm. And as you go down in size from all the way at the biggest at 6.5 to the middle at 5 and the smallest at 4, you're going to get less wind drift and more penetration, and therefore more kinetic energy. Less wind drift because from a side profile you have less surface area for that wind to hit. That's just pretty normal physics there. And then more kinetic energy and more penetration because you have the same amount of energy being transferred from your bow to your arrow, but it's in a smaller surface area, so therefore your kinetic energy and your PSI skyrocket, your pounds per square inch of pressure. So that's why I like a micro diameter arrow. I'll show you guys two arrows right quick from Victory. So if you guys look, hopefully this picks it up pretty decent. On the top here, this arrow is a 4, and on the bottom is a 5. So you guys can probably see a decent difference there. Nothing huge. And then this is actually a very lucky, I guess, monumental arrow for me, because this is the this exact arrow here. It's a 500 spine gold tip XT Hunter. Was the first arrow that I ever killed anything with. I killed a deer when I was, my first deer with a bow when I was 13. Dad and I went out and I killed it in October 26th, 2017. So that's pretty cool. But this is a 6.5, so you guys can kind of see the difference. Here's a 6.5 just by itself, so you guys get a little bit of reference. And then here's it next to a 5. You can see decent little difference there. And then you go from that 6.5 down to what I'm currently shooting at a 4. And hopefully it picks it up decently. You can see there's a pretty good little difference there. So everyone has their place. I think you can definitely kill deer with the 6.5. That arrow right there is I guess the proof of the pudding right there, because I've killed multiple deer with the 6.5, and I've killed deer with the 5, and I've killed deer with the 4. I only shoot 4s now just because it's pretty much the best of the best. Going down in a smaller size, but I just figured I'd kind of spit that information at you guys as we're going through here and getting this fletching done. Now we'll get on to the actual fletching part. I just wanted to throw you guys that information. Now, if you look, we're using this tool right here. This is a Bitzenberger, probably the most commonly known fletching tool / jig on the market. I'm fletching these with a right clamp, or right helical I should say. Left helical, you can get it, but I didn't have one, and to be 100% honest, like I said, I haven't really noticed a difference between a left and a right helical. I've killed everything that I've shot at that I've needed to, with the exception of one animal, and that was an elk, but that's besides the point. We don't talk about that, it's a sore subject. But we're gonna go ahead and clean this off. That's one thing that I always do, is when I fletch arrows, I try to be as clean as far as like priming my arrows, priming my fletches, cleaning out my inserts, and get everything 100% cleaned off and ready to fletch, so I don't have any issues as far as fletches coming off, as far as inserts pulling out or something like that. I try to be the cleanest that I can be and get the most adhesion possible. So we're gonna go ahead and scrape this clamp out, and this clamp actually holds your fletch or your vane, depending on what you're running, and that's how you actually adhere it to your arrow. And we'll go through that, but I'm going to go ahead and scrape this off real quick of any excess glue from previous people that have fletched this, or if I've fletched it, or anyone. And what this will do is just make sure that you get the same amount of equal pressure along your fletch or your vane, whatever you're using, as you glue it down and put it on your arrow. It's super important that you do that so you get the best adhesion that you can, and you just don't try to mitigate as many problems with adhesion during that process as possible. So I think we got this pretty good and cleaned out. And we'll go ahead and get started with the fletching process. So I'll pick you guys up probably from a different angle, and we'll go from there. All right, so we're gonna get into the priming process. And what priming is essentially it is cleaning the surface area in which you are fletching or wrapping. And I'll lead into that real quick too about wraps, what they do, and kind of pros and cons to them. I think the most common reason people use wraps is if they don't want to have to scrape their arrow off, or fletches off their arrow if they're refletching or a vein falls off or whatever. A lot of people just like to peel those wraps off. That's great. I like that. It's pretty easy to get those off, especially for me, someone that works on a lot of arrows. It makes time fly by quite a bit quicker when you have one of those on the back end of the arrow. But one thing that they do hurt is your FOC, and FOC is front of center, and I'll lead into that real quick too. Front of center essentially is the point of balance or percentage of your weight that you have total overall in the very front of your arrow. And what I mean by that is if you have a 500 grain arrow and you have 225 grains up front between 100 grain insert, 100 grain field point, or 125 grain field point, you're running a lot of arrow up front, or a lot of weight up front, excuse me, and your FOC is going to be higher. That leads to better penetration because all of your weight is up front, and that's that's where all of your energy is being initially transferred, is from the front. So you never put a quarterback in front of the lineman; it's always behind them. So that's the best way I can kind of put that. But we'll go into priming, and I always try to go with a full dozen of shafts, and I like them to be bare. These came fresh out of the factory, uncut, full length, 32 inches, like most arrows are standardized. But we're gonna go ahead and prime these, and what I mean by that, you're gonna look at these and be like, well, they're brand new. Why do you need to clean anything off them? They haven't ever been fletched or glued on. Not true. Here's one thing that you guys need to pay attention to, is there's a lot of dust, manufacturing dust, carbon dust. There's just a whole bunch of stuff that you don't want in there. So it's important that you get something, some sort of alcohol or cleaning agent that does not affect the structural integrity of your carbon. Typically with aluminum, you don't have to really worry about it. You can use anything. But with carbon, you have to be a little bit more tedious with what you use. This is a 100% carbon arrow from Victory. There's no steel in core, aluminum, or anything. So we're going to be tedious with what we use. You can either use this product that I have here. This is denatured alcohol. It looks like that. Be sure that if you get alcohol, that it is denatured. If you just get like store-bought, like rubbing alcohol, that can kind of affect how your veins and your fletches adhere to the arrow. I've noticed that. I don't know if it gets down into the fibers of the carbon and it kind of opens them up to where glue isn't susceptible to adhesion to that from the fletch. I don't know how that really works, but just make sure it's denatured alcohol or anything that you can find, like an adhesion kit from AAE Max or like tack veins or something like that. That's always acceptable because obviously it's made for arrows. But we're using denatured alcohol because it's what I had on hand and I've used it a million times and it works fine. So denatured alcohol or something that you can buy at any other sort of archery shop. So what we're gonna do, hopefully I don't cut my finger off opening these things, is we're gonna go ahead. This might be a pry top. Yeah, it is. And we're gonna, there she goes. We're gonna come in here. This is a 100% clean napkin, you guys can see. Not used before. And we're gonna take this arrow that you absolutely have to prime. Prime, prime, prime. That's how you get the max adhesion, and that's how you keep your fletches from coming off. And we're going to fletch it. So I'll show you how dirty it is, and you might not even know it. We're gonna come in here, get a little bit of this denatured alcohol on there, wipe it off a little bit. We're gonna come in here and grab our arrow right here. We're gonna use the back of the napkin, and we're just gonna rub. Nice and shiny, clean. Ooh, she's crisp. Look at the light glare. But look at this. See all that dirt and grime on there? That is why your fletches come off. Is if you are fletching on dirt, you know, dirt shifts. It's not actually on the, you know, it's not part of the arrow. It's just on the surface of it, so it can move around. It can cause consistency issues when fletching. So always do that. We're gonna fold this in half because we like to save the trees. And we're gonna go to another arrow. That one was also pretty dirty. Here's a different, nice and shiny clean. We're gonna keep going through these real quick. I'm gonna go ahead and prime these, and I'll catch up with you guys in a minute. If your arrows don't sound like this, you know, we just start to, you know, start the prime. That means they're nice and perfectly clean. That's what you need. All right, now we have all of our arrows, you know, primed. We're gonna let those dry for a couple minutes before we knock index them, and I'll go on to that here in a minute. But what we're gonna go ahead and do is actually pre-prime all of our fletches. I am using the AAE Max Stealth, the 2.6. I've had a lot of good luck with these. I've 99% of the time, in fact, this is the first arrows that I'll do that I have all pink fletch. 9% of the time I do white, just because I like to see you know, blood on the arrow to indicate whether or not I need to track. But now that I have a camera and I have lighted nocks and everything, it makes it easier for me to find my arrow, and I'm a little bit more confident in my shot. So we're gonna try some pink ones just for the heck of it, and if not, I can always just go back to white. So we're gonna go ahead and prime these, and I'll show you how I do that. What we're gonna do is we're gonna come in here. I've layered up 3 clean paper towels, and we're gonna fold them right in half, just like this, to where they're nice and thick. Pour some of our denatured alcohol in there, just like so, and we're gonna put that on the table. We're gonna grab some of our fletches out. I'll move you guys so you guys can see. And then what we're gonna do is we're just gonna come, oh God. All right, camera fell over. All right, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna come in here and just take our fletch. I'm gonna move you guys to a little bit. Yeah, we're gonna take our fletch and just rub it in the bottom of that alcohol. If you can see, I don't know how well it'll pick it up, but that's perfect amount of alcohol, prime fletch, and we'll move that over to the right, and then we'll go prime the rest of these. But put a little more alcohol on here too. The reason why I don't use a primer pen is because primer pens are pretty rough on fletches. When you know, when you scrape them, you get ridges in there, so that makes lumps of glue, stuff like that. And if you just pat it down, you get plenty of alcohol on there, and it's easy on your fletches. So also that brings me into the next thing. Be very careful and read the directions of your fletches. A lot of people just think, oh, well, I can just throw any glue on there, any sort of alcohol to prime them, glue them. Read the box, so sometimes you might ruin a fletch completely if you don't use the right glue or the right alcohol to you know, get the best adhesion for it. So just be mindful of that. But I'm gonna go ahead and prime all of these, and then we'll get into nocks and indexing, and we'll go from there. We're making our way through priming all these fletches and getting them all set up, and I figured I might as well, while I'm sitting here fletching them, or priming them, excuse me, talk about why I chose the AAE Max and why, why I choose what fletches I choose. I like a longer profile, and this is what an AAE Max looks like, Max Stealth. I like a longer profile, low profile fletch. I think those guide the best without having a lot of influence on the arrow, and I think that's very important to have as little influence on the arrow as you can and tune your bow well. That's why if you see some, like if you shoot, that's why bare shaft tuning is so important. If you can shoot a bare shaft, pretty good distance and not have any issues with your flight, just having a little fletch on the back to give a little bit better steering is all that you really need. So I like those, and I like them lightweight. When I build my arrows, I like a micro diameter, light GPI, grain per inch, bare shaft, and I like to add heavy components to it to get my overall total weight and get a good FOC on there. So I just figured I'd run you through that. I'll show you guys what it looks like when you prime one of these, in slow motion, so you guys can kind of see what I mean by like rubbing it on there, and then you'll be able to see the glue. So check this out. We're going to get into knock indexing and why I think it's important, and why I think everyone should do it for any arrow that they're going to build bare shaft up. And what knock indexing is you mark your shaft in the place that you fletch it, and as you shoot, it's always in the same spot from arrow to arrow, from shot to shot to shot. And that'll make your consistency skyrocket, because you're always shooting from the same part of the spine or wherever you fletched from the same exact spot on every arrow. And I think that's a really big tip that you guys should really take advantage of and look at, or look into trying, and see what it does for you. I think you'll learn a lot from that. So we're gonna go ahead and do it, and I'll show you guys how we do it, but I gotta figure out where I'm gonna end up indexing them. Victory has a spine alignment on their arrows, and I think that's probably where I'm going to end up doing them. If you look, I'll get real close, hopefully my light picks it up. It says spine aligned right here on this part of this arrow. So we'll probably end up going from there as we mark them. So I'll end up doing that, mark one, and then I'll figure out how we're going to end up fletching them. So I'll catch you guys in 1 second. Alright, so what we're end up doing is we're going to take each arrow, or not each arrow, it really won't be that hard now that we get the first one kind of figured out. Like I showed you guys just a second ago with that spine alignment there on Victory, what I have done, each knock will have an index, and what that is, it's a little tab on the side of your knock, and hopefully I can actually get you guys to take a look at it. Hopefully you guys can kind of see it. It's right there on the end of the knock. You'll see just a little tab. Yeah. But we've lined that up with the spine alignment that Victory has depicted on the shaft. And what we're going to end up doing is taking a Sharpie, and we're going to put that right at the end of the knock on the index mark. So what we have done, index mark is right here. And we have just barely Sharpied right where our index mark is. And that way we know that when we fletch these with that up. It's all consistent, and they're all fletched the same way, and they'll fly the same. So in theory, I've never had it not work, but you never know. Maybe you'll get lucky and actually it doesn't work. I'm just kidding. If you do it right, it should always work. So we'll go ahead and do one more for you guys though. So got that one all marked. Okay. And we'll go through and do the rest. Come in here. Take your arrow. That one's already relatively close. We're going to twist our nut where it's lined up with that spine alignment mark. Put it face up. And then we're going to check our fletch, and I'll show you guys how you do that here in a second. Perfect. Money, money, money. All right. So I'll show you guys how you check your fletch. When you're checking your fletch, what this will show you is how you get the max helical with a Bitzenberger, meaning how that arrow or how that fletch lines up and how it pivots around your arrow in the 360 degree spiral, I guess is the best way to put it. So I'll show you guys this from the back side, show you what I'm looking at and tell you kind of how we're lining everything up. So I'll flip you around. I'd like to kind of have you guys set up. As you guys can see here, and hopefully I can actually, as you guys can see here, you can see this yellow label, and if I'll take it out and kind of spin it for you guys so you can see kind of what I'm talking about. There's that spine alignment label right there. See how it comes up and down the shaft? And you guys can kind of see, back up just a little bit. There's that knock index. I'm really close to that knock index face up. And now we're going to check our fletch. So what we're going to do is come in here, put our clamp on. This actually has our fletch in it. And we're going to come and push it all the way down to the very bottom till it hits. You guys kind of heard it. And then we're just going to slightly push it down to where it hits the arrow on the surface. All right, now we're going to take a look here. And as I look, looks pretty good actually. Yes, that should hold very well. Okay, I'll turn this back around so you guys can kind of see it. Now if you look, there is no space on that clamp. There's no, too close, back up, back up. There we go. There's no clamp, there's no air in there. There's nothing. You can't see any daylight on the back side, so that's a perfect fit, and it's not off one side or the other. So when we glue that, that's what we'll look for, and I'll go into the gluing process right now. And fletch our first arrow. And one thing I do want to say is take your time when you're doing this. When you're applying your glue, be tedious, and just let the jig and let the glue do its thing. Don't add too many or too much glue. Don't add too little. When it comes to putting glue on a fletch, a little goes a long way. Just a steady bead down the trough of the fletch will be what you need, and I'll show you guys that up close here in a second, but I'm going to go ahead and do one and get it started just to make sure that our bead of glue is going. Perfect. Spit straight out. I will also say that the glue I am using today, when I just opened it, that's the one thing that slightly bothers me about this glue, but other than that, there's no problems. This is the Boning, what's it called? Fletch Tight, excuse me. I had to think of the name of it, or look at the name of it. I've been using this glue for a long time. I like this and the AAE glue. AAE makes really good glue in my opinion. But we're gonna come in here and we're just gonna put a small, steady bead on our fletch. We're not even putting any pressure on this. We're just going to let it slowly go. Got it from heel to toe, and then we're just going to apply it right to the arrow. Press down with just a little bit of pressure. And I like to count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm going to let that sit. Now what I'm going to do, I fumbled on that, but we can tear a chunk off. Take your napkin or paper towel. Usually I like a Q-tip more, but I didn't bring one like an idiot, so that's my fault. And just wipe any excess off. And then just gently loosen and pull it off. That's one on there. We're going to go ahead and get this first arrow done. I'm probably going to end up running up to the house and grabbing my Q-tip so I can just make it look a little bit cleaner, but I'll catch you guys here in 1 second. Alright, we are back. I actually got Q-tips. I think that's very important when you are fletching arrows. Just always have Q-tips on hand, because sometimes you might get a little more glue in one spot than you would like compared to another. So, and you get like a bubble up and you have to kind of just wipe that off. So we're going to go ahead and do this first arrow. That's one thing I always try to, push to people, is always do one arrow completely fully through first to make sure you got your process down, make sure that you got your inserts that are absolutely perfectly inserted, not going to pull out, your fletcher spacing is even, your glue is, just make sure you always have one arrow perfect, and then just take your time from each arrow to arrow, fletch to fletch, insert to insert, and just be as consistent as you can. I think that's very important. All right, let's do one more, and then I will get you guys at a different angle up close so you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about with applying the glue to the fletch. Just want to do a nice solid little bead. I'm not even squeezing the glue, it's just beading out. Make sure you finish right at the tip there. Put this back on the napkin. And now count to 10. Actually, I'm going to count to 15 because it's colder in here and this glue's not really drying as fast as I want it to. So I'm going to count it a little bit longer here. So I did 15 while I pressed the clip, 15 while I just let it sit by itself without any pressure on it. We're going to check to make sure we got good adhesion on that one. It looks like we did. I think that's the process that we need to do now. That first one that I did, it'll pass, like it'll dry and it'll fletch good, but it was not, I'm very picky about my arrows when I build them, or try to be anyway, because, consistency is key in archery. The more consistent you are in any facet of archery, hunting, anything like that, the better you'll be. That's literally the most advice I can give you for anything, whether it's building arrows, developing a shot process, developing a scent safe process. Just be as consistent as you can, and the success will come. I promise you it will. Just find what works and stick to it. Alright, so those are on there. You guys can kind of see what the helical's looking like, what the side profile's looking like. Looking pretty cool. Now what we're going to do, and this is very important, is heel and toe it. And what you'll do is you'll just add a dot of glue on the end, and that'll keep your end from pulling up. If you shoot through a target, shoot through a deer. I shoot through a lot of deer. Shoot through a lot of targets too, but and might not look the prettiest at first. You might see a couple of mountains of glue at the end of your arrow, but once you shoot it a couple times, the heat of your arrow spinning so fast, it'll crack that glue, and some of that glue will fall off. You shoot through a target, you shoot a target, impact will crack the glue, it'll fall off over time, and it'll just be what needs to be actually in contact with your arrow. So no need to worry there. Now I'll show you what it looks like to apply one directly to the clamp from the arrow, or to the arrow I should say. Come in here, press down, press down, good contact. Hold your arrow and everything in place. Count to 15, arrow. To our next fletch. Alright, so we just finished our first arrow, and I want to show you guys kind of what the expectation for me is personally, what an arrow should look like. So if you guys look, here's our arrow, good helical. Look, you don't see a whole lot of excess glue in there. Everything's nice and lined up, no flare-ups on the sides. And as you guys see, as that arrow turns, that helical's very strong there. So that's kind of what we're looking for. We're gonna let these dry. We'll heel toe them, and then we'll come back down a couple hours later and then peel off all the excess glue that may or may not have kind of squished out as the drying process went through, and we'll come back down. All right, all of our arrows are fletched. The work is not done yet, but we're gonna go ahead and let them all dry. Alrighty. Boop. arrows are done. Yeah, all these arrows are, the Vap TKO 300 spine, 75 stainless steel, half in, half out cert. They're what comes with them, or it doesn't come with them. It's an extra $1, $25 upcharge. But here is our arrow. Only thing different that you will see on these arrows is I will insert my lighted nocks into them. Other than that, that's how I fletch my arrows. That's build them start to finish. Now the last thing we have to do is take 2 arrows. Just grab any 2 random ones. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to check all these, make sure that my veins adhered like they should have. That one looks really good. That one also looks really good. All right, it's the first time we're going to spin these arrows. Let me flip this camera around so I can kind of see myself here. This will be the first time that I have spun either of these arrows, so hopefully this turns out pretty good. I'm excited. Let's see. Here we go. That's a good looking arrow. We'll come over here and put one of our practice broadheads in. I shoot the G5 Mega Meats and they shoot a practice, or they give you a practice broadhead, so we'll spin it with the broadhead. It doesn't really get much better than that. I'll show you what we're looking at here. All right. One last thing that we're gonna do is we are gonna weigh all of these arrows. So this first one is 486 grains. Scale just turned off as I let it sit. They will be about 4 grains heavier with the lighted nock. The G nock from Nocturnal is what I'm going to be shooting on this. So my full arrow setup is actually a Vap TKO Elite in a 300 spine. It is cut 29 inches carbon to carbon, and it has the 75 grain stainless steel insert that they offer, and then it has a 100 grain field point on it with a 3 fletch right with a Bitzenberger jig, AAE Max in their pink color, and then right now is just the stock nocks that they send them with, but they will be Nocturnals in a G nock, and those are about 4 grains heavier than what I have here, or what's in the arrow. So I'll add 4 grains to each arrow to see where our average is and see how accurate we were. If we did our job right and we were consistent enough, we'll be within 2 grains of each other for every arrow. 3 is my threshold, but I'd really like to be within 2, so we'll see. 488. 486, so that's 490. That's 2 grains right there. Double check one more time just to be sure. Yeah. Still within 2 grains. We're just doing 5 random arrows. I haven't picked any of these out. I just kind of grabbed 5 and I put 486. Now this is with the hunting field point that they offer from G5 when you buy their Mega Meat or the mechanical broadhead, so we'll see. 486. I wonder if that first one might be 486. I might have to weigh that first one and see if that one might be the outlier. 486. I bet that first one, I think this was the first one. $485. So I think we're within 1 grain of each other. Let me just double check here. $486. I'll weigh this last one here. $486. So we're within 1 grain. If even that, because that one was teetering and tottering back and forth between 485 and 486. So we're a 490 grain arrow. That's total weight. The balance point FOC is 16.1%, so probably about 16 with that lighted knock, which is really good. That's kind of what I was aiming for, is a high FOC arrow. That's just, high FOC arrows are just always the best. We're gonna come out here into some better lighting. But I highly recommend, like I said, usually about 15% FOC is what we aim for, but that is my video, guys. That's how I build my arrows. So whether or not you watched the whole thing, if you did, I really appreciate it, because I hope you guys learned something. I really took my time and tried to dive, in depth, but not too in depth where I overwhelm you guys. If you guys have something you want to learn or something you're curious about how I do my stuff, just leave it in the comments and I'll try to answer it. But yeah, that's how I build my arrows from start to finish. I'll show you how I find my arrows in a different video, but as far as assembling them, fletching them, and going through that process, that's it. So I'll catch you guys in the next video. So just leave me a like and comment, subscribe if you would. But until then, I'll see you guys in the next video.